Hi, Dave Youngquist, Last Cavalry TV, and welcome to part 2 of Painting the Cowboy. Today we're going to be working on the bridle, horse furniture, the saddle, and the saddle blanket. Let's get started. Here's the saddle blanket, the saddle, the bridle, and my messed up finger. We'll do the best we can. So the first thing we want to do is paint the bridle. So I've base coated it with Vallejo Camo Black Brown. Very easy step. And now I'm going to be adding highlights using a mahogany brown just to show a little bit of wear and tear on the edges. You notice quite often I'm using the side of the brush or just the very tip. And again, just hitting the edges in a nice, smooth, but random pattern. Yeah, a little bit there. There we go. Just to make it pop a bit more. Okay, so we're about done with that. Now we're going to paint the buckle. I'm using Ammo of Mig, a gunmetal. It's extremely fine pigmented. It doesn't have the sparklies like other metallic paints that I found, but it does take a minute to set up, so do leave it on your palette for a minute or so before you start painting with it. Otherwise it's a bit too thin. And I do want to remind you, always use and keep separate brushes for your metallics. Otherwise, you'll never be able to get all those little specklies out of there, and it will affect your other colors if you tend to use the same brush. So now, going to base coat the saddle blanket with an Andrea Pearl Gray. It's a nice off-white color, and I'm not thinning the paint much during this step because I do want an opaque finish. I've mentioned it before, I'll mention it again. Andrea paints dry dead flat, which is perfect for the effect we're trying to achieve here, which is of an actual material. We just work that around. There it is, we're done. Just add a little bit more. The blanket that I'm painting is based on this original Navajo rug that was given to me by my great uncle from our ranch in Kansas. It's about 100+ years old. So as you can see, this little detail is a little hard to film, but basically this is what happens. First we lay in the base coat with an Andrea Pearl Gray. Once that is applied, we paint the first part of the pattern using the Andrea Flat Black. Next we apply the Vallejo Flat Red to extend the pattern. We follow that with London Gray, cutting into the red, and finally back to the flat red to create the geometric pattern. Ivory and black are mixed together to add some texture. And there you go. So here's the back half of the blanket in detail, and I'm pretty happy with the results. I'll paint the rest of the blanket off camera and show it to you in our final shot. Some wear and tear, highlights, and the saddle blanket's done. Now, we go back to the mahogany brown that we used for our highlight color on the bridle, and now we're going to use it as our base color for the saddle and all of the strapping. I'm just using a damp brush. Again, the paint is not really thinned out, so we want very good coverage here. And we're just blocking in that color. Mahogany brown is a very nice reddish brown, and really a perfect base coat for the leather effects on the saddle we're going to achieve. Yeah, a little bit more there. There we go. I should mention that this horse weighs a couple pounds, so you really can't hold on to it very long, being that it is made out of white metal. So now I mixed some of the Camo Black Brown and the Mahogany Brown, and we're going to lay in our shadow colors. And it's a little bit heavier on the Camo Brown because we do want some contrast. And we just apply the shadows where the light is not going to be hitting. And this mix is more thinned out than in the previous steps. We do want it to flow in the areas that that we're trying to cover. And we're going to stipple a bit of that on just to create a random pattern on the leather, as you all would know. I'm going to thin that color out, or our color mix out, and just start dabbing it on, stippling it on. And again, it is the mix of the mahogany brown and the camo black brown. Just dab it on. Nice random pattern, no rules here. But we need to add some highlights now. So I'm going to add some of the orange brown with the mahogany brown. The orange brown is a Vallejo color. We mix those two together. And you'll notice we're thinning it out a bit, but not as much as we did on our shadow color. And using the edge of the brush in a random stippling pattern, we begin to hit our highlights, places that would receive the most wear and receive the most light. Again, using the edge of the brush, and notice that I'm not making a clean sweep, but dancing the brush along the edges. Yeah, just like that. A bit more on the edge. Now I'll go back and forth between the shadow colors and the highlight colors, trying to create a random worn pattern, but always keeping in mind of how a saddle would have worn in real life. So a bit more wear on the edges, some staining up around the saddle area, because obviously, a saddle on the plains is going to get a tremendous amount of wear and tear. You can see just stippling that in there. A bit more. And again, just go back and forth, between your shadows and your highlights. And in the next step, we'll unify everything. And if you're feeling it's not popping enough, just add a bit more of the orange brown. There we go. Now, taking Vallejo smoke, which you've seen me use in numerous videos, and we do thin this out quite a bit, basically make a wash out of it. And then we're going to cover everything that we've just painted. It's going to dry to a nice satin finish. It's a very kind of a tobacco-y looking color, but it's also going to unify our shadows, our base color, and our highlights. We'll get rid of that stark look that will quite often appear when you're, trying to create special effects. There we go. So we liberally apply this smoke wash over everything that we've just painted. And you may find that you'll have to go back again and add some more highlights, maybe even some more shadows. But when dry, this will really, truly look like leather. Thanks so much for stopping by. It's been Dave Youngquist, Last Cavalry TV, and we'll see you real soon.